Well, good evening, friends. Welcome to the Seven Pillars Talk Show with Teresa Poor, founder of Seven Pillars, Unbreakable Life. And I am so excited to spend some moments with you today. I hope you're enjoying this talk show. As I created the Unbreakable Life journey, I realized that it had to be based on pillars because anything that we do in life has a foundation attached to it. And the seven pillars of creating an unbreakable life start with self discovery. Who am I? That is one of the number one questions that we go through life trying to discover is who am I? The second pillar is our mindset and our mind shifting moments, those key areas where when we see things from a different lens, we have an opportunity to change the trajectory of our life. Our third pillar is our beliefs and or limiting beliefs, discovering what it is that we believe, why we believe it, and the things potentially in our belief systems that may be holding us back from stepping into our power. Number four is our defining moments. Sometimes those defining moments are just spoken words that propel you and that make you think a new thought. Sometimes they're trauma moments, but defining moments nonetheless will take us on a new path. Number five is our health. And we are going to spend a lot of time talking about our health today with our special guest, Dr. Brittany Hines. But I don't want to get ahead of myself there because there are two other pillars. Number six is community. The one thing that separates us from living a life of survival and living a life of just take care of me, that one thing that takes us into our life's purpose is centered around community. So community is so important. And I will say a little bit of a spoiler alert. My guest speaker today, I met through a very important community that I have not established, but been part of over the last 5 years. And finally, our seventh pillar is purpose. Those seven pillars help us build one upon another to create our unbreakable life so that when life's challenges hit us, we'll bend, we'll learn, we'll grow, but we won't break. So please, without further ado, help me welcome to the stage my sweet friend, beautiful friend, Dr. Brittany Hines with Ahead of the Curve Chiropractic in Austin, Texas. Hey, Dr. Brittany.
Hello.
It's so good to see you today.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure. Dr. Brittany, as I think about the seven pillars that I've talked about, and I was thinking, okay, well, obviously health is one that you fit the parameter of.
Yeah.
But you also fit discovery, right? As we learn about our unique bodies, and you fit the piece of community as you become part of the journey for people, whether it's a doctor community or a friends community. So there's so many places that we can plug in, but I don't want to take us there yet. I want the audience to have a chance to get to hear your story a little bit, who you are, what you do, where you're at, where you're from, and just a little bit about what caused you to take this life's journey.
Oh man. So God had me on a crazy journey, and all the pillars that you talked about, I can see kind of, as you were going through them, because I have, different areas, 6 different areas that I teach people to try to get ahead of the curve. And so in, looking at your pillars and the things that I'm teaching people, I saw different parts as you're speaking about it, when I fix this, then that took me to this step and this level. And, going through limiting beliefs, how, that opens you up to so much more. So I started, right out of high school. I went to Ouachita Baptist University for a semester, and long story short, I got suspended with the dean's daughter. I was a little bit of a rebel back then.
No way.
My parents were going through a divorce, and so I kind of felt a little lost at that time. And after I was pursuing a career in major in accounting, and then I ended up not having turned in my FAFSA. Growing up, my dad was a minister, and my mom was church pianist and a music teacher. And so we didn't have a lot of money to send me to school. And so I had gotten these grants and scholarships, but I didn't know that I needed to turn in the FAFSA because they were like, oh, you've turned all these other things in. And they just assumed I had. So after I got suspended from Ouachita Baptist, then they told me that I still owed $6,000. And that was $6,000 that my parents didn't have. And even though I was kind of doing my own crazy thing, and partying a little bit as an 18-year-old, I still made really good grades. And so, you know, they wouldn't release my transcript till I paid that off. So that's when I started working. And I was working, oh my gosh, I don't know how I did this. I was going to school, taking night and weekend classes at community college. I was working full-time for a temp agency for a trust company in Waco. And then I waited tables nights and weekends. And I had a boyfriend. I don't know. We just have more energy when we're young. So I ended up falling into chiropractic because I worked for this guy named Vito who had the nicest restaurant in Waco at the time. And so I said, you know, anybody worth knowing? I've got to pay this off and, you know, get myself through school. Where can I make some money? And he said, well, you can make money, you know, in healthcare, working for a doctor. And I was like, ooh, I don't really do blood needles or germs. That's not my thing. I can't.
Yeah.
And he said, well, how about working for a chiropractor? And I was like, I have no idea what a chiropractor does, but as long as there's no blood needles or germs, I'm in. So I interviewed. I got the position. The first day I was there, I was typing up a report and I popped my own back. And the owner, his jaw dropped and he's like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. It feels good. And he's like, do you know what we do here? And I said, no, I just know there were no blood needles or germs. So, so I got my first exam. I found out that I had been having debilitating migraines since I was little and in a car accident because of the problem in my neck. And so he helped me correct my neck and get rid of my migraines. And then while I was there, I saw all of these other people coming in with all kinds of health conditions, getting off of their medications through chiropractic care. And it made sense to me. It made sense to me that God designed us in utero through the nervous system, right? It's the mom's nervous system, brain and spinal cord, that tells the baby's nervous system how to develop the heart, the lungs, everything else. And it's still the system that controls every single cell today.
Wow.
So seeing all these people get better, my mom had suffered with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. And my aunts had it too. And I knew that I had the potential to have it because it was hereditary. And so seeing all these people get better, get out of pain, I got kind of mad, honestly, at first, because I was like, why didn't anybody tell me and my family that this existed and that this was an option, right? How come I hadn't heard about it? So that's what made me passionate. I started working for a different chiropractor when I moved to Austin 20 years ago, and worked for him for 3 years and sent a lot of people to him. And he was like, Brittany, you have to be a chiropractor. You need to go to chiropractic school. And I was like, oh, but that's really expensive and takes a lot of time. You know, I'm doing this myself. And he was like, it doesn't matter. You're passionate about it. You've got to do this. And so I was glad that I had him to push me and tell me you're capable. And after school, he was like, you have everything you need to start your own business, to start your own practice. You're capable. And so, you know, he pushed me to go back to Dallas, where I was from, and go to school there. Luckily, Parker is one of the best in the country, and it's located in Dallas. So got my degree there, set up shop there, and then have always wanted to move back to Austin. And so 2 years ago, I bought a second practice in Austin. I ended up having to close my Dallas practice after my divorce and after I moved here. It was too much for me to handle, and it didn't really work without me in it. And so that was sad. But in moving here to Austin, then I've developed so much more community.
Yeah.
And it's just been a totally different life. I think also getting rid of that negative relationship with my ex-husband, who misrepresented himself when we met. Uh, there was a lot of stuff there, but moving away from that, healing from that has allowed me to step into a thriving community of women in business
Mm-hmm.
that have really pushed me to grow, and we've supported each other like you and I have.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my journey to where I'm at now. Uh,
Wow. I love all the bits and pieces of your story. I love, the part where you talked about all these different hats that you had, and we do what we have to do when we need to do it to survive, like the multiple jobs,
yeah,
right? And that, going through it, we're like, well, I had to. But I think the other thing that establishes in us, Dr. Brittany, is the evidence that when something hard happens and we have to do something, you have the evidence that says, "Oh, I can. I
yeah,
have." Right? I love that. I always believe that, our brains look for facts.
yeah,
Our minds look for evidence to support those facts.
yeah,
And we get that all over the place, right? If our fact is maybe my financial situation is tough, because legitimately it is, I'm going to look for evidence to either change it and improve it because I know I can, or evidence to keep me there.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And either one, it's our mind and our beliefs and all that. The other thing I really liked about your story is when you talked about the person, the doctor that you worked under who believed in you. And, when I think about the power of a community, sometimes, people think, well, a community is in multiples, it's in numbers, it's a big thing, right? Sometimes our community is of one. Sometimes it's that one person that believes in you and that encourages you and pushes you on. And Dr. Brittany, I feel like you get to be that one person for so many people,
Yeah.
right? And,
Well,
yeah.
when my patients come in and see me, I'm not your traditional pop you and send you on your way kind of chiropractor. I'm looking at the big picture, and we're trying to make strides with, specifically spinal hygiene and spinal correction to prevent further decay. But I have a lot of patients that come in and they're stressed about money, or they're stressed about their failing marriage, or they're stressed about their dating situation. And we hold all of those stresses in our bodies. And
Right.
so being ahead of relationships was one thing that I added to my different areas that I try to talk to people about getting ahead of, because it makes such a difference. The more
Mhm.
stressed we are, the more cortisol that we have, our stress hormones elevate, our bodies are more acidic. We hold on to fat in our midsection specifically, which is never where we want it. That's not one of the good places to have curves, right? But
Right.
that's what we hold on to it. And then we hold it in our muscles and we get tense, and it affects our posture. You think about somebody who's stressed out and depressed, and their posture is like this, it's all hunched in and protective, really, coming in. So working on, like, I talk to my patients about their stressors, and a lot of times, they'll cry when they're getting adjusted because I might be the only one touching them, to be
Mm.
honest, for some people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then just releasing that tension. I'll have spots that I go to that every time I touch this one spot, that's where this person holds their boss trauma, and so that comes out every time. but
Wow.
we hold those relationship stresses in our bodies. And sometimes, even though I'm not a counselor, I end up, talking to people, encouraging them, sometimes, praying with them. I'm, laying hands on everybody and praying on most of my patients while I'm adjusting them too, which is something they don't know that I'm doing unless they ask. Sometimes I'm praying out loud, but then I usually end up crying. So I try not to do that when we're busy,
Yeah.
something crazy. But
Yeah.
I mean, the relationship piece of it, I was really encouraged, I think, when I watched the Secrets of the Blue Zones. Um,
Mm.
and that's why I added the relationships, that part of it, to teach people and to, talk to people about seeking counselors, but
Right.
also how are you serving your community and actively seeking out those relationships. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I didn't have this type of community in Dallas. I went to church and I had a lot of referrals from church, but I had a lot of limiting beliefs when I was in Dallas. That being a place that, I grew up with my family where we struggled financially. And there's a lot of superficiality in Dallas versus Austin.
Sure.
That's why I like it better here. That's a part of it. But I recently posted a quote that said, "When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment that it grows in, not the flower." And I felt moving myself out of Dallas to Austin, and seeking out relationships. It was really a patient that told me, because I was like, hey, I need friends. I don't have any friends here. And I
Right.
visited like 8 different churches, and it takes time to cultivate relationships. It takes time and intentionality. And
Right.
so, she was like, well, try this group or this group of women. So I tried a couple, and then, went to a mixer where it was, Texas Women in Business and Networking Boss Babes and Created Woman and some other networking groups together. And I kind of looked them up and like, okay, what kind of vibe am I getting? Like, okay, I think I could be friends with these people, and, figured out where I could uh, find people that were like-minded, that
Mm.
I could help serve and that would help me grow as well. And it's been life-changing,
Yeah.
honestly. It's been
Yeah.
huge.
Well, and I think about community being pillar number 6 in the Unbreakable Life program. Again, it's not necessarily like health. Health is pillar number 5. And from an importance level, it's not like I rate them importance of like health is, below mindset. But I put them in a level, that I believe we grow in, right? Once we know who we are, and we know our thinking patterns and why we think the way we think, and if those thinking patterns actually serve us. And as I hear your story, I kind of see that succession period happening, right? Like I'm discovering who I am, and then I'm discovering and I'm finding that, this was my thinking, and then these were my limiting beliefs. And then I've took care of my body, and now I'm ready for community, because that literally is the thing that grows us to the next level. But one thing I love that you said is that you have to create it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get, some people are like, well, you have this community. Yeah, I created it. Like I put myself out there, and that's not easy, right? It is not easy to show up and do a Facebook Live. It's not easy necessarily to show up to a networking group. I guarantee you it is not easy to walk into a church, especially for some people that maybe are dealing with some limiting beliefs around religious environments, right? None of those things are easy, but neither is growth.
Right.
They call it growing pains. They don't call it growing pleasures, although it is pleasurable once you get past some of the pain.
Well, yeah, and I just, I've been watching The Chosen, and I just finished season 3, which I think is my favorite season so far.
Wait till 4. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. But season 3 was all about healing, right? It was like,
Mm.
Jesus and the disciples and all of the miracles, that they set out to pursue. And then you see, Simon Peter getting mad at God because of, his wife's miscarriage. And then that coming to a head when he called him out onto the water. And he was like, why do you think I let you go through these trials? To make you strong. So, even though, Peter was mad at God for allowing his wife to go through a miscarriage, like God, and he was like, we had Jesus with us. Like Jesus could have prevented that, but he said it was to make you stronger. And so I believe even that we get sick, when you look at that, interaction too with the blind man, and they say, well, who was it that sinned? Was it this man or his parents? Because generational sin can cause our bodies to decay, can cause all kinds of issues, and health problems, and then our sins against our temple can cause health problems, but it could also be to serve a purpose. And so, that's why I can't ever give any guarantees. Even if you work on all the things, there are no guarantees that we're going to be healed on this side, right? It's always God's desire to heal us, but it may not be till we get to heaven, right?
Right. I love that you said that. And I think about, this is a spoiler alert, but really I was watching this thing with Jonathan Rumi when he was being interviewed, and somebody goes, well, do you have any spoiler alerts? He's like, spoiler alerts? There's a whole book. It's called the Bible,
Yes. I saw that. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, it's funny. So I'm going to say, when Simon Peter went through that situation, which was, I can't even imagine what that felt like, because I've never had to experience that situation from a wife or a husband, obviously, perspective. But because he went through it, Dr. Brittany, he had a new muscle called empathy. That when Thomas went through something that was devastating, Simon Peter was the only one that could reach him. And so you're right. A lot of times we go through hard stuff. We go through yucky relationships. We go through trauma. We go through all those things. A lot of times, not that it was God's design. There's a lot of free will associated with that. A lot of people acting stupid within their free will range, right? But at the same time, it gives us a new muscle called empathy to be able to reach out and help somebody else in that environment. And as you're seeing people that are coming in, you talk about this, you see people that come in with badges, on them, or bandages that they're hiding, or whatever. You have this ability. And so a lot of these hard things, I think, that you've gone through, now you can reach people that God's putting into your practice, right? He's like, here you go. I trust you, Dr. Brittany. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, all of those trials that make us strong, I think part of it also, you see Simon Peter go through, being humbled, right? It humbled him. He had to learn some humility in that whole process. Breaking down in front of all of his brothers in Christ, it was a humbling experience for him. And so even like with the Secret to the Blue Zones, I saw something. There's a community in Costa Rica, and these men rely on each other. And because they rely on each other and they have this community where they can go to each other with their needs, and serve each other, then I believe that gives us purpose, right? So like sometimes we have to find ourselves in a place of need so that we can allow people to serve us, so that when we're serving them, it's not coming from a self-righteous place. I think that's kind of what Peter went through. But this community of men in Costa Rica, they're living, let's see, I think, so they have, generations that live together and have, monogamous lifelong relationships. and these supportive social networks that encourage healthy, happy lifestyles. And this group of men are 3 times more likely to live to 90
Mm,
compared to men in the United States.
mm. Which our
3,
average lifespan is what, 78? And that
yeah.
usually includes those higher higher end people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, when we're serving our purpose in our community, because what was the first thing that God said wasn't good in the Bible? It wasn't good for man to be alone.
That's
Like
right.
that was the very first thing.
That's right.
So we're not meant to be alone. And I try to encourage people, like, while you don't have to be in a church to have community, right? You and I talked about this the other day. You can
Yeah.
have, professional communities and, different networks and all kinds of communities. But God, Christ died for the church. And I know that a lot of people avoid church because it's full of imperfect people, and maybe they were hurt by the church politics or,
Right.
something. I mean, that stuff happens all the time and it's heartbreaking and it's not God's design for church. But I think in the church we have collective worship, which is good for our souls, like
Yeah.
humming and singing helps our nervous systems be regulated. We were designed to worship God and to worship with others. And
Yeah.
it's just a little glimpse of what heaven will be like.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think about our frequencies too, Dr. Brittany, because I don't want to leave this piece. Our frequency from, living a life of survival and, it's all about me and all those things and all of the pride and regret and all of those things. The thing that elevates our frequency to the next level and to the next level and to the highest level of frequency is gratitude. It always is. And church becomes a place within the realm of worship that just fosters gratitude. And there
yeah,
are other places we can find that. Obviously, we can wake up every morning and have a gratitude journal and start our day grateful,
yeah,
right? We can call up a friend and say, "Man, I'm so grateful for you."
yeah,
Or I really appreciate, and that is an art that I think is missing in our world. I feel like so many of us, going back to prior to Simon Peter's moment of humility,
mm, yeah,
we are prideful. And
mhm,
that pride not only stops us from growth, but it also keeps us from being a blessing to one another.
yeah,
Because if my pride keeps me from being vulnerable to you and saying, "Hey, I need your help," or actually, even sometimes it'll keep me from possibly saying something like, "Dr. Brittany, I see great value in you." Because then it puts me in a place of, hoping that I don't get hurt by expressing my appreciation,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so finding a way to redirect that thought patterns and become grateful for relationships, we will build other people up, and at the same time we will increase our levels of frequency that attracts better things, better relationships, better support, better feeling in our body. Like I have to constantly get like this all day yesterday when I was at SeaWorld. I was trying to fix my back.
Good job. Did y'all have fun?
It was a blast. It was a blast. The weather was perfect. It was amazing.
That's
But it
awesome.
just made me like, okay, I'm walking,
Right.
but that's from being around community and
Yeah.
from trusting that somebody else can help me and being willing to be part of that community and receive help. I think there's so much that we could unpack right there because pride puts up walls.
Yes.
Community helps tear them down and lift us up together.
Well, and fear, right? There's fear because people have allowed themselves to be vulnerable. I mean, I allowed myself to be vulnerable and thought that God was leading me to marriage with my ex-husband. And
Mhm.
turned out he was a sociopathic liar who lied about going to seminary and had a fake diploma and a fake ring from Texas A&M. Like he was a fraud, but he said that he said the right things in saying that he saw and fell in love with Christ in me. And I was like, "Oh, that's what I was taught my whole life in church to look for." Those were like the key words. And I ignored a lot of red flags, right? But that that was hurtful,
It was.
to be single, to have been single for so long. I got married when I was 33. And then to be hurt by, he ended up having an affair. And so, all of that ended pretty traumatically.
Right.
But I'm now, just finished up my premarital counseling with my future husband. And, I've learned so much. And I talk to women who are going through divorce or have gone through a traumatic breakup and they don't want to trust again. And so, with any relationship, once you've been hurt and that your trust has been violated and you've gone through, depression and just that betrayal, it's hard sometimes to open yourself up again.
Right.
But if you can heal those areas and then, look for the red flags, learn from your mistakes, and set your boundaries well, then, I heard it said recently at a Ladies Lifestyle Network event. There was a woman that was speaking, and she said, when you are at peace with yourself, you don't have to protect it. Like, you
Right.
don't have to, like, you're setting boundaries, but you're at peace. You don't have to be on the defense.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so if you know who you are and you've dealt with your fears and you trust your discernment and God to work through you and you're talking to him, right? Then could you still get hurt in a relationship? Could you still be betrayed because people are flawed? Yes. But is it worth it to take that risk to be able to partner with somebody else and make each other better and meet each other's needs? It's always worth it. It's
Yeah.
always worth it to experience that love and allow people to meet your needs.
Yeah.
Like, and God's meeting those through people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And the enemy will use people as well,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate when there's open doors in our lives, or thoughts or whatever. One of the things that at our last Unbreakable conference that I spoke about, and this was just something that just kind of came out because my husband handed me something on the stage, and I'm like, thank you, honey. But I think, when we go through our own healing journey, whatever that looks like, and I like to, put it in the package of an unbreakable life, because I saw the power of how these key pillars transformed everything about Teresa Poor, like everything about me. Um, However, one of the things is, as we went through self-discovery and then our belief systems and then the way our brains work, you get to talk a lot about our spinal neurological system, right? Our spinal cord and all of the things that travel up and down there. One of the things that I love to dig into is neuroscience and how our minds work, and NLP, neuro linguistic programming, like how all that works. And as I've learned all that, one of the things that has really resonated with me is that just as I am my own human with my own human beliefs that are created over a lifetime of programming, literally. I mean, I've got 43 years of programming, right? And my brain was looking for facts, my mind supporting the evidence of all those facts for 43 years. I have to also remember that my husband has just a little more experience, 47 years of programming, the exact human that he is. And as I went through this journey, I found my expectations of his ability to meet my needs were just lowered. Not that I don't believe that he can, but the weight and the pressure I have put on him to do that has
Yeah.
significantly declined, because I've realized I am the only one responsible for all of those things. And when I am having that communion with the Lord, I know that he can fill all of those needs. Royal's just a side hustle bonus, right? I mean, like, he's just the hot guy standing over here that I get to spend life with in all of our fun and fault and all of those things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
mind shift. And I'm like, I have so much more appreciation for our relationship now that I went through the personal work for myself and could see, oh, yeah, I was putting way too much pressure on that hunk of mine.
Right. Well, and I mean, I tell people too, I've always liked the phrase, date openly and be cautiously optimistic,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to expect the worst from people. You want to give people a chance to prove themselves, selves, but you want to. My mom always taught me, trust with verification.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so, my um, almost fiance, he hasn't put a ring on it yet, but
You
it's
know what?
coming.
I'm just gonna say this. I've seen him around you. He worships the ground you walk on, second to Christ. But he is your Prince Charming.
He is so kind. Um, and now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, you were saying your mom, telling you about trust but verify, and then your
Oh,
current teacher had said yes.
yeah.
Sorry.
So Josh and I really, have invested in our trust bank, with different things. As we've been able to communicate, like one thing that I loved about him is that, we can always have a conversation. We can communicate. I can say, hey, when this happened, then I felt this way. And he'll be like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't my intention. Like, I'll try to do a better job of communicating this or doing that. And that's huge.
It is
Like,
huge.
that is huge just for somebody to be willing to put forth that effort, and not be, defensive of their actions, or, there was so much gaslighting from my past marriage that
Yeah,
I,
it sounds like he needed a lot of healing for whatever his world was like. He needs some
yeah.
healing. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So I'm thankful for, I think if I hadn't gone through what I went through, I wouldn't have grown and healed and known what to look for, what was important moving forward in a future marriage partnership where I saw somebody that said online, it was a pastor, and he said, instead of looking for somebody that loves you, the question is not, does he love you? The question is, where is he going? And are
Mm,
you headed in the same direction? Right?
mm,
Because if he's not going where you want to go, you can't allow him to lead you in that, right? You
mm.
can't follow that leadership. So that's something that was kind of like, oh, I don't think I've ever heard it put that way before. But
Yeah.
that is so true. You don't want to partner with somebody that has a different long term vision than you,
Right.
and that's not just companionship in the day to day. But I really believe that, that beyond, like you said, that relationship with Christ, that who you partner with, who you choose to date, who you choose to marry, that will make the biggest difference, I think, in your, what you believe about yourself. Because if
Mm.
you have a toxic partner that's bringing you down, that's broken, like, yes, we should desire for them to pursue healing, pursue wholeness, but that doesn't mean that you have to subject yourself to their abuse, right? And
Right.
so, growing up,
I think any relationship that, it's been said many, many times, you become the five people you spend the most time with.
yeah,
And it just because we're in, friends, relation, whatever, that doesn't mean we have to choose that environment, right?
yeah,
Sometimes we have to get to know ourselves enough, honor ourselves enough, and believe that we are worthy of better connections, community, and relationships, whatever that looks like. And
yeah,
sometimes it's boundaries. I mean, there's sometimes that there's people in your life that you love and you can't sever the tie with. Maybe it's a family member, but you can put up boundaries on how much of your mind you offer to them,
yes,
and that's a big thing too. And I think that's a challenging thing for a lot of people to do. Well, I think that, you are an inspiration to so many people, particularly women who are trying to rediscover themselves. Again, this trial with your ex, I hate that. I hate that he put you through that, because I see the joy in you, and I can't even imagine, how much he chipped away. But I know your joy comes from the Lord, and he's
Yeah.
just continuing to enlighten it and let it just glow everywhere. And when I walk into your office, one of my favorite sounds is your laughter and your joy that you bring. When we had our I was going to say like our onboarding visit or whatever we call that, just the joy you have to share what you do, the excitement and the energy that just exudes out of you. I think that you make such a huge impact for so many people. And one thing that I also appreciate about you is your loyalty, because I see that through your clients. I see that through your relationships within your groups. I see it through some experiences that I've seen with Unbreakable. I mean, Dr. Brittany, I just think that that is one of the best attributes that I see in you is your loyalty and your joy.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me, and I really appreciate that. It's definitely, I think loyalty is very important to me. And so I think that finding like-minded people that are looking for that is important. But I think it's important to have in a healthcare provider too, because you want somebody that wants to see you get better, and that acknowledges that it's gonna be more than just throwing a pill at it, right? And so there are so many different aspects to our health. I mean, again, it says in my bio, I guess, that you'll post with this, I am very passionate about, like, I got into this to try to learn how to help my family members and then how to help myself avoid this. But I feel like it's my God-given purpose to help others remove interference that might be holding them back from living their life and pursuing their God-given purpose at 100%. And so, if I can be a light and shine on some areas and remove that interference to enhance what people are able to do and affect their quality and quantity of life, then I feel like that's my purpose. And I'm thankful that I got that at a younger age, because I know people in their 40s that still don't understand their purpose in life. What am I here for? And that affects your longevity and your overall health, just that belief, like knowing. And so that's, to me, I'm so thankful that God gave me that vision and that gift of purpose at a younger age. So that's what I try to do, is just empower people, because, spinal hygiene is not something that a lot of people have heard of. It's new school chiropractic. So people are like, oh, so, getting adjusted is not enough, like, to prevent decay. I've been getting adjusted for 20 years. Like, why is my spine still rotting? I'm like, you have to do more. It's not just what I'm doing, but it's what you're doing outside of here. Because we know if you're going to eat, you got to brush your teeth every day, and you still see your dentist and get annual x-rays done to check the health of your teeth. So we should be x-raying our spines. How much more important is that when it houses our lifeline, our nervous system that God heals through? So just giving people something to do to take control of their health and prevent decay and disease, because there's nothing that makes you look older than poor posture and degeneration, a lack of mobility. So I don't want that. And I don't wish that on anybody, even my husband.
That's funny. Well, and as you say that, I'm like, and it makes you taller too. I remember the first time that that I came to see you, and you told me about my reverse curve in my neck. And then you talked about, the stretching and all that. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll get taller with this. And then you're like, no, you're probably already too tall with that reverse curve. We're going to fix it. I'm like, no.
Some people do get taller. It depends on where the angles are in the spine. So I've had people gain up to 1.5 inches. And, I've worked with scoliosis patients And so, yeah, working on those angles where your spine, I kind of call it like accordions down. When you aim at those angles, then that does give you more height.
Yeah. Well, I've learned to hold my head up higher. How about that?
Good job. Good job.
Wow. Well, Dr. Brittany, I know people are going to want to know, who is this amazing woman? Well, they know that, but how can I find you? So would you please tell our audience how they can find you so they can connect and learn more about your services?
Yeah, so the website is Ahead of the Curve Chiro, CHIRO.com. And also on Facebook, / Ahead of the Curve Chiro, on Instagram, Ahead of the Curve Chiro. So they can find me there. And if they send me a message on social media or through my website or call the office and just mention that they watch this podcast, then I'm happy to give anybody half off their initial exam and x-rays in my office. So.
Wow, that's really generous. Yes. Yes. Well, and they need to sign up for that massage as well. That amazing massage that you do, which, by the way, I am scheduled for.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. You need that. Yeah, and I don't do the massages, but Amy is my amazing deep tissue massage therapist. And she just started working on Saturdays too, so we can provide more times for people to come in. So
brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Well, Dr. Brittany, thank you for being my guest today. I love how conversations just flow where they need to flow. And I appreciate your willingness to share your journey and share your heart and how it is that you found your God-given purpose and how you serve others with it. Because purpose, I don't think I shared this on this talk, but purpose sometimes comes from pleasure. Yeah. It most times comes from pain.
Yeah.
But it is always to serve others. That is why we were here, is to love and to serve others. And so for people that have maybe heard you talk about your purpose and maybe they're hungry to discover theirs, I would say, continue watching the Unbreakable Seven Pillars Talk Show. Come to our Unbreakable Life Conference. Connect with people like Dr. Brittany, because there is a unique purpose placed within each and every one of us. And sometimes we just get little snippets of it along our journey, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you may find yourself on one trajectory and then something happens and it shifts. So don't ever feel like, you haven't arrived because you haven't discovered it yet. Instead, let's think about how can we discover it together through this beautiful community. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you. It's so much fun. And we will see you guys next week on the Seven Pillars Talk Show.